All right, let's get into the top 25.
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so I had him ranked a little bit higher than Wiggs did. Last year, you know, I thought Mayfield finally found a home in Tampa Bay. He threw for what was it, over 4,000 yards,
Yeah.
and he played all 17 games last year. Uh, Threw for what was it, 28 touchdowns.
Yep.
So I think he's got a really proven wide receiver core there. I think you know, Mike Evans is a lot like Keenan Allen. Year in, year out, this guy just is consistent. You got Chris Godwin. Yeah, they've got a really what is it? Is it Kate Otten? I think it is, or
Yep.
their tight end. They've got a really good set of weapons on offense. I think White as their running back. These guys, are, I think, going to be even better this year on offense. I think Mayfield's found his home now in Tampa Bay ever since leaving Cleveland. They obviously believed in him, and he wants to be there. Uh, he let them. What, they made the playoffs last year, I believe, as well. So I think that Mayfield is he's actually one of my sleeper picks this year because I really feel that he could have an even better year this year than he did last year because last year was his first year there. Now he's getting into his second year. They've brought back the core of his offense. So they brought in another young, I believe Bucky Irving they drafted. They got Chase Edmonds, but that Bucky Irving is I think is going to be another good weapon at running back for them. So I think Mayfield's going to surprise a lot of people this year. It wouldn't surprise me if he goes out there and he throws for 4,500 yards this year and has over 30 touchdowns. Because every year, people think, Evans is he's gonna regress, and every year Evans comes out and just proves them wrong. The guy's just
Freak of nature.
freak of nature, consistent. And if Godwin can bounce back, um, you know, their receiving core is really, you know, really not going to be that bad. So, and given the fact that they now have a running back, um, that's going to produce some White, I think sky's the limit with Baker this year.
Yeah, I think Baker will have another pretty good year. I don't know how good it'll be. It's kind of hard to judge because he really hasn't put like 2 years back to back together yet in his career. So that's why I kind of ranked him a little bit lower because I don't know what I'm gonna get from him this year. And looking at the stats from last year, like from a fantasy perspective, like I think the standard at QB was a little bit lower than what it's been in the past. Like at least in our league, he was ranked 10th, and that was throwing 4,000 yards and 28 touchdowns. Back in like his second year, he was sitting around the 18 spot with like 3,800 yards. So it's kind of interesting from a numbers perspective to look at the range, but um, yeah, I really just don't know how to judge him because he hasn't put 2 years back to back together, and I kind of just played it safe. Again, he's another quarterback that would be a backup at best. So um, yeah, but he's got Mike Evans. That's an easy, 1,000 yards there. He could have Chris Godwin at 1,000 yards if Godwin has a good year. Godwin's shown he can have 1,000 yards next to Mike Evans, so those two alone should do decent for him. Kate Otten won't be bad either, and then obviously Rashad White's Rashad White. So I think he proved himself last year, and he can run and receive the ball at any given point.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Again, he's one of my sleeper picks this year. So, do I think he's necessarily a starter in fantasy right now? I think he's right on the border. Uh, but I think that if somebody goes down with an injury and is going to miss time, he's definitely a guy you can plug in there and have some confidence in him having a good game for you.
To move on from that, we got Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, so here's another one. I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy, but hear me out. I'm a huge Jayden Daniels fan. I think that this guy has everything that you need to be a great quarterback. I think he's walking into a situation in Washington where he is gonna jump in and really kind of surprise some people this year. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Well, he's a rookie; he's going to make a lot of mistakes," and that may well be. But listen, I think Jayden, he has the ability with the receiving core that they have in Washington. McLaurin has always been underrated. I think Dotson is going to have um, a good year. Um, they also have isn't Samuel in Washington as well? I believe.
No, he's
Or did
Buffalo now.
He's in Buffalo now. That's right. So he's got
Luke McCaffrey.
Luke McCaffrey. Yeah, and Luke's one of my sleeper guys this year. I think that Luke is got a shot to be definitely a high end rookie receiver this year. It's in his blood. His dad. I think he's going to be a lot like his dad. It's so. I think their running back situation is really good. I think Brian Robinson and Eckler are two good weapons. I think Robinson's going to have the better season out of the two, but I think those are two guys that are going to just help. They drafted they got Zach Ertz, but they also drafted a rookie tight end and Sanat. I think that they've got a lot of weapons there for Daniels. I think the use of his legs is going to help him as long as he protects himself. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Hey, listen, Richardson last year did that and he got hurt." I just see Jayden Daniels again. I'm high on him. I think he's going to be a surprise in fantasy football this year. It's not going to surprise me at all if he has a significant amount of rushing yards. He could have he could be like Josh Allen where he has rushing TDs in the red zone just because of his legs. So, you know, I I could see him definitely throwing for over 3,500 yards, and around maybe the 25 to 30 touchdown range. I definitely could see him possibly running for 400 or 500 yards and having maybe 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. From a fantasy perspective, that's gold. So I think this guy has a real shot to go out there um, and have a really great year. Now, with that said, keep in mind um, he's going to make mistakes. So uh, if you draft him, know that there's going to be some growing pains, especially at the beginning of the year. There's a very real possibility that he could throw a few interceptions this year, because it's the NFL. It's going to be different. So I don't want to sit here and say that he's not going to have growing pains, because I think every rookie goes through that. But I will say this. Here's my hot take. I could see him having a better year than Caleb Williams. I know some people are going to say that that's crazy, but it wouldn't surprise me that Jayden Daniels, when everything's said and done at the end of the year, ends up having a better year than Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I don't know how to judge him fully yet, so I just kind of played it safe there at the 28. I think McLaurin will be a 1,000-yard receiver, and I think McLaurin will have a pop-off year, but aside from that, you have the weapons, you got 2 running backs, you got some tight ends, you got some receivers, so kind of see how it plays on out. 23 spot, Geno Smith.
Yeah, I had Geno at 21, and again, this I still think Geno's the guy going into the start of the year. It does, make me wonder if Seattle, given that they've got a new coaching staff, given that they brought in Sam Howell from Washington via trade, makes me wonder if they're gonna have a QB battle there. So this could very well change in my rankings closer to the season, depending on how that plays out. I think Geno's definitely resurrected his career and found a home. But I also think that that Howell is definitely um, someone that they brought in to compete. I mean, Howell, he played well for Washington last year. He's a young guy, and the new coaching staff could very well decide that they don't want to ride with Geno. So we're gonna have to watch this, throughout training camp and see how it plays out, closer to the season in regards to who they decide to go with. But listen, you got DK Metcalf, you've got JSN, you've got Lockett. You've got Walker as your running back, right? I mean, they've got a lot of weapons on that offense. And last year he threw for over 3,600 yards, and he had over 20. He had 20 touchdowns. So his TD production wasn't as high last year, but he still threw for 3,600 yards
and missed 2 games.
And he missed 2 games too. So I think Geno's really earned the opportunity to be the starter there. With the new coaching staff, though, it's really kind of hard to judge. Would I say Geno is a starting quarterback in fantasy? I still think he's a backup at this point. I think it's a huge risk to rely on your team with Geno Smith as your QB. Is he definitely a bye week replacement? Yes. But keep in the back of your head the fact that depending on how training camp plays out and whether they decide they want to go with Geno or how, that again could impact his ranking here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything there. I think you hit that pretty spot on, and we're pretty close ranking wise there between the two, so I don't think there's much more to be said. Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, so I had Trevor Lawrence at 20, and that might have been a little bit high, to be quite honest with you. Frankly, seeing where Wiggs has him ranked, I can definitely see him at 25. Listen, I'm not a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. I don't think he's done anything to show, he threw for 4,000 yards last year and 21 touchdowns. The year before, he threw for 4,100 yards, and then his rookie year, he had 3,600 yards. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is the franchise quarterback for the Jaguars. Yes, they did end up going to the playoffs last year, but I'm just, they lost Calvin Ridley. They got Travis Etienne. Who's the receivers again? They got
Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis.
Yeah. So They got Ingram, so they do have weapons on offense. Uh, I don't know. My gut is telling me that Trevor, he signed his big deal this year, which again, $50 million a year is insane. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. He signed his big deal. I kind of feel like he's gonna have a letdown year. That's my opinion. Some people may disagree with that, and that's fine. I don't, I just think he's gonna have a letdown year, and I'm not really high on him this year. So
Yeah, he's not gonna have as good of a year as he had last year. Like you lose Calvin Ridley, which, if we're being completely honest, he missed quite a few easy throws to Ridley. But I don't know. Their receiving core doesn't impress me too much. They have a rookie and Brian Thomas coming in, and like yeah,
I
Christian
think Brian could be
Kirk's
good, but
yeah.
I just don't know that Trevor is going to be the guy that's going to make him look good.
But you have Christian Kirk as your wide receiver one, who's really only had one good year in his career, and then Gabe Davis has always been like a second or third receiver behind others. So I don't know. We'll kind of see how it goes. Again, I think this is someone, to me, is a bench player at best right now. If he ends up starting off the year pretty hot, then maybe a starter. But I think that's all that.
Yeah, in a 12-man league, I definitely don't view him as a starter. So
Derek Carr.
here's another one where Wiggs and I maybe disagree a little bit. Derek Carr is an interesting character. Um, he he did really, I thought he did well with Vegas. I think that what he threw for what was
38.
3,800 yards and 25 touchdowns last year. Uh, but I just don't know. I'm just not convinced that. Well, first of all, I think that he definitely does not have chemistry with Olave right now. Maybe that changes over this offseason with Michael Thomas gone now. Who else do they got at receiver? They got what they got
Rashid Shaheed.
Rashid Shaheed, and St. Brown is on their team now. Amron's brother. So they got Cedric Wilson, they got Johnson and Hill at tight end. I mean, you got Kamara in your backfield, and then I believe they drafted a rookie this year, didn't they? Or well, they got Kamara and Miller in their backfield, along with Jamal Williams. So it's not like their offense is lacking weapons. I just um, I just need to see that chemistry between him and Olave. Maybe that happens this year. Olave, to me, is a tremendous talent. I mean, I think that guy, he's going to be a great receiver in this league. But I think this is the make or break year for Derek Carr and with the Saints. If Carr goes out there and he shows he's got chemistry with Olave, with Kamara and the other weapons they have, and he shows that he can lead these guys into the playoffs, I think that'll prove me wrong. I think if he goes out here and he has a mediocre season and he doesn't uh, have that chemistry with Olave, I think it's going to be a long year for the Saints. I think that if they don't make the playoffs, I think that it could be Carr's last year um, as as their quarterback. They also drafted an interesting QB in Spencer Rattler, which has gotten a lot of talk. He was one of the names that came up during the draft as a potential surprise QB out of this draft class. So I think he's going to have some. There's going to be a lot of talk around Rattler as well. So I think this is a make or break year for Carr. I'm sorry. I don't view him as a starter. That's just me. I think he's an injury replacement, bye week guy at best. But even with an injury replacement, I think that there's some other guys that I would take over Carr. I mean, I would take I definitely would take Geno Smith, over him. I would take a couple, Baker Mayfield over him. Jayden Daniels. I mean, a lot of the guys underneath. There's a lot of guys underneath that I would take over Derek Carr.
I think Derek Carr will be consistent with what he's done. Like looking at his numbers, like he, he's only had 1 year where it was like outstanding, but every other year he's just been consistent for the most part. So I think his connection with Olave will be better this year, and it's going to have to be for them to have a successful year. And like you said, Thomas gone is, I think, going to help Olave a lot. And Olave is just someone who I think highly of as well. So aside from that, you do have quite some depth there at running back.